Thanks for listening to the People, Not Titles podcast. We are brought to you by our great sponsors, Land Trust Title Services, your partners for results. You like how you look?
Not really, but
yeah.
I can't do anything about that.
Well, hello, this is Steve Kemp with the People, Not Titles podcast, and I am here again. This is second time with Mike Mazek, attorney Mike Mazek, friend Mike Mazek, soccer player extraordinaire, and just an update from last podcast, Mike. I was nominated the title Soccer Player of the Year.
You were.
And since I was the only title soccer player this year,
That's not true. There were other people,
right.
And they were pretty good.
Okay.
But you did fair and square win the award.
Fair and square won the award, and we almost beat the Chicago Police Department. That's another kind of update. We had them at halftime. I thought the game was over. Went to shake their hands, and they informed me to get over to my side because we have another half to go, and that's when it all went swirling down the toilet.
The one thing I will say is that first half was great. I don't want to talk about the second half, but the first half was fantastic. We put in quite an effort. You literally gave it your all because you thought it was the end of the game. But we'll have a rematch against them too, so maybe next time I'm on, we'll have some better news. Yeah,
and Mike, I go back to the halftime speech, and since you're our coach, I would just say it was a 4 out of 10.
4 out of 10?
Yeah.
Oh, man.
So you got to up your game.
Well, I think we only had 4 out of 10 people playing in the second half. So I think that was one of our issues.
That's funny. All right, let's get to it. Let's, on to serious business. So Mike and I were talking the other day. We were talking about assessments coming out in Chicagoland, Cook County, and Mike had some comments, and I thought, wow, we really should do something on this and cover it. So first off, Mike, let's talk just a little bit about, I know there's a lot of people that know the assessment process, but let's just talk about that and what we're seeing that is kind of unique and unusual this year.
Yeah, so and we're talking about the way it impacts our industry is that in every real estate contract, there's a spot to put in a percentage for tax prorations, so for real estate tax prorations. And just going back to the beginning, we pay our taxes in arrears. So this year we pay for last year's taxes. Mm-hmm. And so what's notable about that is that percentage anticipates always a certain increase, a little bit of a bump. So generally speaking, you'll see in the suburbs 105%, and in the city you'll see 110%. It's not necessarily the standard, but it's the more common percentages that you'll see in the contract. Well,
and in the contract, what we're actually talking about for those who are just kind of looking like, hey, I want to become a real estate investor, those are the the seller setting aside a proration to the buyer so that they are equipped to pay when the tax bill comes due the following year.
Yeah, exactly. Because it's paid in arrears, if we had a closing today, we would need to get a credit for the second half of 2023 if we were in Cook County. Mm-hmm. For the second half of 2023, we'd need to get a credit for that because we didn't own the property if we're closing today during that time. The seller did, but that bill isn't out yet. Mm-hmm. So the seller has to give us a credit for that amount. Same thing, through from January 1st, 2024 through today. So when we're talking about that proration, there's a certain expectation that there's going to be a slight increase. So in the suburbs, historically, it's been 5% increase, so 105%. And in the city, it's been 110%, or a 10% increase. However, all of this gets adjusted even more when there's a reassessment. Mm-hmm. And so every 3 years in Cook County, there's a reassessment that takes place in the county, and it's broken down into 3 sections of Chicagoland. So number 1, we have Chicago proper. And then we have the north and northwest suburbs and south and southwest suburbs. So every 3 years, one of those areas is going to be reassessed. So last year was the reassessment window for the south and southwest suburbs. Mm-hmm. So in 2023, the county went around. They used to drive around, but now they sort of go based off of data and images. And in some cases, they'll drive there. And they'll determine whether or not the property has had any visible improvements, any permits pulled, anything that would potentially increase the assessed value of a property. They'll also determine if something the opposite has happened, if it's been vacant or if it's been demolished or anything like that. But more commonly, assuming none of those things have happened, in the south and southwest suburbs last year, the county, determined that, as you might expect because of the property values, that most of the suburbs have increased in value. And therefore, the assessed value has gone up. So where, as real estate professionals, we come in is that might be more than 5%. And in the contract, we're only accounting for about a 5% adjustment. But we know in certain south and southwest suburbs that it's going to be more than 5%, and it was. And so we can see in the assessed value that there may be a 33% increase. It's not outrageous. I mean, it seems like a lot, but most of Chicagoland has dealt with that kind of increase, in part because of the increase in home prices, but also in part to the fact that, in certain communities, there were improvements to a local high school or, other improvements in the area that have to be paid for through property taxes, whether it's a library, school, whatever it is.
So even though they assess it a certain way, your home may not have increased by 33%.
It is true, yeah. It's true that because there are other factors that'll determine. So the assessed value is one of three factors that determines your tax bill. There's also the equalization factor and the tax rate. So the equalization factor is sort of a more general, statewide number that gets adjusted, but the tax rate is something that's a little bit more local. So
and is the equalization where all the politicians share the difference equally?
It does seem like that sometimes, especially if you look in the parking lot. But I think the equalization factor, over the years, it's been used to adjust the amount of money that comes in from tax revenue if, for example, home prices have gone down. And there have been times where someone will say, well, my taxes went up a third because my home price went up, but 10, 12 years ago, that wasn't the case when home prices went down. My taxes didn't go down 50%, but my home was 50% less. So sometimes the other numbers get tweaked a little bit to make sure that the county still has and can maintain its services and everything that it provides. But just from a professional standpoint, what we want to look at is, so that was the south and southwest suburbs. If you were in the north and northwest suburbs, 2022, that bill came out last year in 2023, you're probably great. You know what the tax bill is, and that's not going to change until 2025. The bills for that will come out in 2026. Last year, however, with south and southwest suburbs, those bills aren't out yet. The 2023 bills will come out this year. And more importantly, any change in the assessed value will come in the second half of 2023. So we're really looking at fall, winter of 2024 to find out what our tax bill really is going to be. So it does mean that it takes a little bit more analysis to determine what the tax proration might be.
So if you have my cousin Vinny, the attorney, the traffic guy, he or gal, they might not know how to handle this. Right. And that's why it's really important to have someone like you who's a real estate attorney in the mix. So that's the first thing. But so let's go into, Mike, maybe you want to say more about how does this impact buyers? So what should buyers be thinking about in this situation?
Yeah, I think the one thing, I guess all of this is a very confusing subject. It's not, when somebody's submitting an offer to a contract, they're sort of visualizing themselves in the community and what they're going to do to the house and how they'll, raise the family or where the dog will be. They very rarely think, well, what are the taxes going to be, next year?
Because they see that number on the listing and they figured it all out and they figured out their monthly payment. Their mortgage person has calculated that in. They just look and go, that's going to be my payment.
Yeah.
But
and it's a bit scary because even if that payment is what the payment is currently, so most contracts will say the tax prorations are based on the last ascertainable tax year. So that word ascertainable, really all it does is it makes it clear that it has to be both installments. So for Cook County, for example, you'll get an installment in the spring and one in the fall. Sometimes the fall one in the last few years has been delayed into the winter. But that tax bill, we need two of them to be ascertainable. We need a full year. And so right now, for example, a few days ago, the first installment tax bill for 2023 came out. but it doesn't mean that second installment bill is out, because the second installment bill is where the newly assessed value will show up. So where it creates the risk for clients is that we'll look and we'll see. And sometimes people will even say, well, the 2023 bill is out, I'm just going to double that. And, that's kind of roughly what I think, the bill will be for 2023. But that's not correct in the south and southwest suburbs, because that 2023 reassessment took place. It'll show up on the second half bill. So it'll show up in the second half of 2024. So where it creates the risk is if we're just doing sort of run-of-the-mill 105% and we don't really look at the potential exposure, we might find out that the tax bill that comes out for the time that the seller owned the property, so we're talking about the second half of 2023, the seller owned the property during that time, but we're finding out that what we get at closing is insufficient to cover that amount, because instead of going up 5%, it might have gone up 25, 30, 40%. So that's where it creates that risk, and it requires a little bit of analysis. Now, every few weeks throughout the reassessment window, there's the newly assessed value comes out. It's available on the website. You can go on the Cook County Assessor website, and it'll say 2023 first pass, for example, or it'll
which might be the reason that the seller sold to begin with.
Exactly.
Our taxes are going up. Let's get the hell out of here.
Yeah, taxes do motivate people to move, not necessarily out of the state, but sometimes to other areas where the taxes aren't as high. And like we said, there are oftentimes schools tend to create an increase in tax rate and improvements to schools, which is great if you're using the schools, but if you're not, maybe that's not where you want to live if they're going to spend a lot of money in the coming years improving a high school, for example.
Mike, and so the 2024 bill, will it cover the increase for all of 2023?
Yeah, so the second bill when it comes out, which of course it's confusing the wording of it, but it's the 2023 bill. It just comes out in 2024.
Right.
But that second installment tax bill, when it comes out for 2023, payable in 2024, that'll be the full, bill with the newly assessed value for the south and southwest suburbs. So, and same thing, Chicago dealt with it a couple years ago, and then north and northwest suburbs dealt with it last year. Most of the people in the north and northwest suburbs, probably experienced a little bit of sticker shock when that bill came out last year, because, there are a number of communities that were making improvements to the infrastructure, to roads, to schools, in some cases maybe building a stadium for a football team. Those are all things that sometimes will impact your property taxes in the short term. So, and the idea being that if you make those improvements, more people will move into that area, more people will want to send their kids to that better school, and then the taxes will level out.
And your values might go up.
Exactly, your home value goes up, and more people will live in that community, and therefore, maybe we pay now for that construction, but down the road we won't. So, there are certainly different theories as to, the benefits, the pros and cons of something like that. I think most people believe, certainly most of my clients over the years, they've always felt like, I'm okay paying more for property taxes if I know that it's going to a good place. And so, that's probably a whole different session, about, interacting with your local politicians and making sure that that's the case.
Okay, so, and how that could really bear out in everyday life for the buyer is, all of a sudden, excuse me, they get a note from their mortgage company that says, hey, if you don't build it in to your contract to where you have adequate funds into your escrow account, come the fall here, you could get a note from your mortgage company that says, hey, we're short, you need to send in a check for $2,000.
Yeah. I mean, they'll always cushion it even more too. So even if your tax bill is going up a few $100s, they're always going to, the lender typically will want to add, a couple hundred more to that even. So, what the biggest, point of risk for, people in our profession, agents, is if we know that the assessed value is going to change and go up, what do we have to do to protect that client? And there's two real theories to it. Number one, we can just handle it up front. We can just make sure that the client is aware. And that's something that we do all the time. We're on weekends, whenever, we're regularly in a situation, and certainly last year when in south and southwest suburbs, where, agents would call and say, Mike, what are the taxes going to be next year? And we just do some quick calculations. We'll use the assessed value. We might use an old tax rate and old equalization factor because those won't come out till a later time. But at least we know now this might be an estimate. This is a rough range of what the tax bill might go up to, so that now we can decide, is this even a property that we should be looking at? Is this something that's out of our price range eventually? Not now. It might be fine now because we're going off of a 2023 or 2022 tax bill. But is this something that really is going to impair us because we don't want to buy a property only to find out that the tax bill is going to go up severely? It happens. There are people, in certain communities where if you've bought a property with the expectation of your tax bill, even with the assessed value, that the tax bill will roughly be around this range, only to find out that something else caused a substantial increase. So, that's the first part. How do we deal with this up front? We can submit offers with higher, percentages. You can submit an offer that says 127%. You see it at certain times. But does that put our client in the best position to get that offer accepted, especially in a multiple offer situation? There are times where sellers will say, I'm only going to do 100%.
Right.
I'm not even going to do 105%.
And the other buyer might not know to even watch for that, and
Right.
so goes in unawares, not realizing their tax bill is going to go up.
Yeah, exactly. So it probably is best suited for a conversation between attorneys once you're under contract. And it's, a conversation that attorneys have all the time. And
So are you saying, Mike, you write in 105, but then when we're under contract and you're discussing it and you get a chance to review the contract and look at the assessed values and actually make the client aware, then you could say, hey, listen, Mr. Seller's attorney, we're noticing this. We'd like to petition for X.
Yeah, and so that's probably the best strategy.
Okay.
I would say it lets the offer go through.
Yeah.
That's a good strategy, in particular when the buyer knows. If you have a conversation even before you submit that offer.
Hey, we're making this offer, and here's our two-step kind of strategy.
Yeah.
Is we're going to take a look at the assessed value, reevaluate it, and we're going to make this ask because it's important for you. Or if you're willing to swallow this increase in taxes, you want the property bad enough, don't forget this conversation.
Yeah, right.
Come November when you call everyone and freak out.
Right, exactly. Yeah, it's great to have, to walk in with all the knowledge and information that you can. The other thing you can do, obviously, is you can appeal your taxes, so you can walk into a situation and say, well, the assessed value on this property is $250,000 and we're going to submit an offer at $230,000. We already know that that's going to be a good appeal next year when the assessment.
Yeah. So as a buyer's agent, you have a buyer that's hesitant. You go, oh, I've heard about these assessed values. You might be able to say, hey, listen, we might have to tolerate this a little bit, but let's get it here, and then we can go in. I got my guy, Mike Mazek, who can appeal the taxes, and we'll talk about that in a second.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there are so many situations where clients will come back, or even during attorney review, or once we're at closing, we'll be able to see the assessed value just is way too high. And sometimes there's nothing you can do about it. There, historically in parts of Chicago, sometimes there are properties that are just overassessed, and you can't really do much about it. But other, areas, particularly in the suburbs, if the assessed value is more than what you bought the property for, then clearly the assessed value is wrong. The assessed value should reflect, market value. In fact, just as an average, it tends to wind up between 70 to 80% of what market value is. So if you're genuinely paying, more, your assessed value is more than what you purchased the property for, that's a good appeal. The exception to that, of course, there's always exceptions. But the exception to that, of course, is that something's happened to the condition of the property that justifies a lower purchase price. So maybe there's something wrong with the condition. Maybe there's something a bigger issue, unpermitted work or something like that justifies a little bit more risk and therefore a lower purchase price.
The People Not Titles podcast is proud to be sponsored by Land Trust Title Services, your partners for results.
Therefore a lower purchase price.
I see. Okay, so we talked about the buyer, Mike. Let's talk about the seller. The seller knows these assessments. They know it could become a factor in this. How are you preparing a seller, or how do you recommend an agent prepare a seller for the eventuality that it might come up during contract time?
Yeah, so it's really important because sellers typically aren't really that sellers aren't really looking at assessed values on a radar the way that we are on the property tax appeal side. So, for example, we'll know when certain townships are opening up in Chicago for reassessment. However, most sellers don't. Most sellers get bombarded with a series of letters and junk mail from property tax appeal attorneys saying, this is when you have to appeal and you should go do this. That's how most people find out that they can even appeal their taxes. The notice of reassessment letter that comes out from the county doesn't necessarily make it that easy to appeal your taxes, but it does give you the information that you need. So people can appeal their taxes on their own. And so when you're representing a seller may not know that they're going to have to pay more than 110% or more than 105%, because they might just expect that that's how it was, that's how it's going to be. So preparing a seller for the fact that your assessed value has gone up if you're in the south and southwest suburbs, or in 2024, that'll be Chicago again. So in the coming months, you'll see Chicago get reassessed. If you find that, and you can look it up at the Cook County Assessor website, if you find that assessed value has gone up, ideally not too much. Most of Chicago experienced a pretty big jump, last go around in 2021. But if you do find that assessed value has gone up, it's important to let the seller know we can't really do. We'll accept the contract probably at 110% for the prorations. There's a good chance that they're going to ask for 127, whatever the dollar amount, whatever the assessed value is, or maybe an escrow, so that money is held aside to cover any difference that might come about. So that's how we prepare sellers. Oftentimes, too, the other thing, like you talked about, sometimes this motivates sellers to ultimately decide, to move, and it might affect where that seller is going to move.
It could be a prospecting technique for the agents, right? Hey, did you know your taxes are going up? If there's the time to sell it, let's do it before the tax bills come out.
Yeah, there's a lot of partner agents that we work with where we'll remind certain agents and we'll say, you guys, we represented this party a few months ago or last year, and their assessment window is up. If you wanted to reach out to them, it's a great way to reach out to past clients. You always want to keep that connection there. And it's a great way to remind past clients, you have 30 days to appeal your taxes. You can do so, or, if you don't have an attorney that can do it, we know one who can help you.
Great. So that's great, Mike. You're a resource for agents on buyers, sellers, investors, that kind of thing. We understand this idea. So let's talk a little bit I want to talk about your firm for just a moment.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the real estate side of your practice. And give us the idea of the muscle and the horsepower there at your practice.
Yeah, so we originally, and this is actually our 15th year.
Congratulations.
So it's our 15th, thanks. It's our 15th year anniversary. When we first started out, I did some transactions, but there was a lot of litigation that we handled. So we handled false disclosure cases and some real estate litigation, adverse possession, some interesting cases, but it did really lead us to look at the contract and some of the communication that occurred during a transaction. Are there things that could have been cleaned up from files that we received from other, attorneys or however it was handled? Are there things that can be done during a transaction that can make life a little bit easier for a buyer who then has to sue the seller, or even for a seller to properly disclose any material defects? So that's when we started to do a lot more real estate transactions. And, with that focus of, are we asking the right questions about water seepage, any sort of termite issues, roof, water seepage, masonry issues, things like that. Are the right questions being asked to confirm what the seller knows, so that if there is an issue down the road, we can seek a remedy from that previous seller. And so now, over the years, we've become a pretty robust real estate transactional firm. We do, hundreds of transactions each year.
Residential, commercial, lease work, right?
Yeah, we do residential and commercial transactions. There was a slowdown on commercial work, but now it's coming back quite a bit. Lease reviews, editing, drafting. We also, represent a lot of parties that are in some sort of conflict with a condo association. So association disputes.
Yep.
We represent a lot of condo associations. In the last couple of years in particular, without having in-person meetings for a few years, a lot of condo associations passed on some deferred maintenance. And we're seeing that this year, that some of that maintenance is costing a lot of money. but a board might not be able to pass a special assessment. There aren't enough votes, but something needs to be done because maybe a top unit is experiencing water, but the association doesn't have the funds and nobody agrees on a special assessment and it only impacts one unit. So can that unit sue the association to get something done? Those are the types of cases that we take on now. And, in terms of, our staff, I'm the attorney on all of the matters, and we have a legal director and 2 paralegals that are great support staff. They're all experienced. They've been doing this for a long time. And so on transactions, for example, we'll go and get all the association documents. We'll make sure that they're complete, that you're not just getting, 2 months of meeting minutes from, 2014 and passing that along. It's one of our goals, and one of the ways that we can help our industry is to make sure there's a lot more transparency with association documents. So we always get that for the agent, for the seller, and we have a great system for that. Our paralegals are wonderful at hounding some of the property managers to get all the information that they need. And so, but the clients interact with me, they'll interact with staff, and we've got a pretty good system. It's worked now, and it's grown quite a bit in the last 15 years.
Awesome. And also, you have an estate planning aspect to it that's complementary to the real estate business, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So we also, same thing, you evolve, you learn a little bit about what people want, and certainly over time, when property passes generationally, we oftentimes will assist families in creating a trust or a will or a land trust that might better distribute that real estate down the road. Same thing with entity formation, and for our investor clients, making sure there's a property management entity and then maybe another entity that owns the property, so that that involvement is a little bit separate. The entity that's signing the lease is not necessarily the same entity that owns the property. So there are a lot of different strategies that we've used over the years, but our estate planning division has grown quite a bit. I do a lot of estate plans this year where it's with a goal in mind, and we have good conversations about what's going to happen in the future. What do we want to protect now? But if we're going to create something long term, are we going to go in an area where we're going to make real estate investments? Are we going to go in an area where we want to stagger distributions because our kids are very young? Maybe we don't want them to get everything at 18. Maybe we give them a portion at 18, 25, 30, things like that. Mm-hmm. So, and the estate planning world itself has evolved quite a bit, and it's just, there are so many different options for our clients. It's great to have those conversations.
And okay, so that's great. And now let's talk about the real meat of it, which is the way that you help people contest their taxes.
Yeah.
Right. And so, what's the system? How do people get engaged with you on that front?
Yeah, I think and most people that own a home receive some sort of correspondence. So we're one of many attorneys and firms that handle property tax appeals. So we handle appeals in Lake County, Cook County, and DuPage County, and McHenry. And those appeals, we usually will work with the client to see if it's a worthwhile appeal. Most of the time, it's worth it to just try an appeal, but occasionally you might not want to appeal. Your assessed value might already be too low compared to what the property is worth. But we'll do an analysis up front, and then if it's a great fit, then we'll let you know that, hey, we'd like to file this appeal for you. Like most appeal firms, it's contingent on a successful appeal. So you wouldn't get billed unless we were successful. And sometimes, and oftentimes actually, if it doesn't go through on the first try, we'll go through a board of review appeal and provide some additional insight. And we've had great success over that using that first layer and that second layer over the past several years, especially over some pretty significant jumps. The last round for the north and northwest suburbs and Chicago, and Cook County in particular, were pretty severe. People got hit with some substantial increases. So in south and southwest suburbs, we'll see that this year. Hopefully, this round for Chicago and moving forward won't be that bad. But we're there to help you through that process. And essentially, we may ask you for some documents. But for the most part, we'll do all the work behind the scenes and hopefully give you some good news if it gets approved.
Mike, and I see this as an opportunity for real estate agents out there, who's really the majority of our audience. We have other people in the real estate community, but to really be intentional about picking their attorney. Because here, when we're in this kind of environment and in this kind of market, to pick someone that can not only really speak articulately about these things as opposed to letting that piece of the transaction get away from you, and next thing you know, you're kind of scrambling, that wasn't my attorney. And unfortunately, if something goes wrong in the transaction, the agent is going to be coupled up with the person that's, maybe didn't give quite enough information to have the client understand. But here, an agent who picks you can say, hey, I've got my guy, we're going to, number one, consider it on our offer, but as well, we're going to have a resource that's familiar with your transaction that's going to be able to contest the property and that kind of thing. So do a review.
Yeah, I mean, it's always great whenever an agent refers us to a client. Our goal is we want to make sure that client gets top-notch service, but there's also a lot of opportunities to connect the whole team and
Absolutely.
make sure that we're providing communication that kind of reflects what that agent does. And we work with some of the best agents in the city, and it's just so much fun to kind of, I love having that opportunity to work with someone and have our styles match up, and
Absolutely.
so the client sort of feels like this is a team, and then this is my team more than that.
Yeah.
And so we've worked with many agents over the years, and we've been able to kind of match our communication style, and even show some of the agents that our system, and kind of work together to kind of have a brand for each of those transactions. And I think it's really important because the client doesn't really expect to have a piecemeal experience. They don't really expect to work with an agent and then go find their own inspector, find their own attorney, and find their own lender. They love being able to do it all in one place. And if you've got the right team together, it's just great. The clients, they express so much joy because it's such a naturally stressful situation. So to go then and have to go research, which attorney they're going to hire or whatever, it's just such an added job to an already difficult job.
Yeah, and I always say it's like watching you could have great players on an all-star team, but they never play as a team.
Yeah.
But you could have a great team, and not all of the players are all-stars, even though you are an all-star. Mike.
Not at soccer.
Yeah, not at soccer. Mike, so let's talk seriously about the White Sox.
Yeah.
Are they moving? What's happening?
It's bad. It's not good. Last year was a rough year. They did change up the lineup a little bit. It looks a little bit different. It's a much different team. Probably needed. This might be one of those situations where
They're bringing Tony back?
maybe as a fan, we could use some fans out there, but not in the dugout, I don't think. But it might be kind of addition by subtraction. They were probably, and a lot of the players that were there that left are fantastic players, all-star players.
Yeah.
But probably, just the combination of folks in the last couple of years just didn't work out. There was a nice window there. There's some playoff games. There's a home playoff game that was great.
That was amazing. Yeah, I was there, Mike, with you. Yeah, actually.
Right,
yeah, Houston.
There was, one.
We had 'em.
One great.
We had them right at the beginning, 0-0. We had them right where we wanted them.
Yeah, that's about all we did that game. But
but are they moving? That's the question. Is that the word?
Oh, that's right. This is a real estate podcast.
Yeah.
So it does seem like I can't really see that Nashville deal coming together.
Okay.
Although. Nashville will probably get a baseball team soon. I don't see. It almost looks like, Chicago's done this over years to suggest that we might be going there and then settling for something new here in Chicago.
We've seen the play before.
Neighborhood 78 or Block 78 looks fantastic.
Yeah.
It looks great. I love going.
Hardly anyone would blame them. Is that right?
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
It looks fantastic over there. That would be a tremendous use of that property and that real estate in Chicago. Closer to downtown. I know Cubs fans love to talk about how few people go to White Sox games, but sometimes that's a good thing. You're comfortable out there. It's not necessarily a crowded, sweaty environment like Wrigley is sometimes. But
yeah, you could actually catch a day game at Wrigley from there and ride your bike down to the Sox game.
Yeah. I've never done that, but I I know every year there's a few games where you can go day game, Cubs game, and then take the train to a night game, Sox game.
Yeah.
I think that's a bucket list item for me.
Yeah.
Maybe
Okay.
This is the year we do
Okay.
it.
All right. Maybe I'll be in with you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, Mike, I just want to first off say it's always a pleasure working with you, and we thank you for your partnership over at Land Trust. But, and I just want to say to the agents and buyers and sellers out there, you would just do a great service to your clients by leveraging Mike and his team. So thank you, Mike, for your expertise here too on
Thanks, Steve.
all the information.
Always fun. Thank you.
All right. All right, bud. Hey, thanks for listening to the People Not Titles podcast. We are proudly sponsored by Land Trust Title Services. If you enjoyed the podcast, please hit the like button, please subscribe, and we'd love it if you'd share our podcast with your friends. Thanks a lot.